My name is Lena Arnold Fritsch. And I welcome you to this shared learning event today. Um, as we are looking at online fundraising through big gift campaigns. Let me just share my slides. Yeah, wait. I hope you can all see this. Yeah. Okay. Good. Great. Um, Yeah, so we will look at big gift campaigns and how organizations working in the global solidarity sector can make use of them. And it's just not okay. All right. Sorry, not my day. Sorry. I don't know why it does that. Now, um, yeah, and we'll look at what we can learn from peers, so from other organizations that have successfully participated in big gift campaigns. Before I start introducing I'm sorry. Normally it doesn't do that by itself, so I'm not sure why it's doing it now.
Maybe it's on, is it on automatic slideshow or something?
Maybe it is, yeah. It seems like a very beginner's mistake, but
It
okay.
says use, maybe, because it
Hmm?
says use timings. Maybe where it says use timings, you switch
Yeah,
that off, maybe,
okay.
and then you're in control.
Let's try again. Okay, right. Okay. I was going to say before we start with the actual program, I'm just going to go through some brief housekeeping points. The session is being recorded, as you can see, and will be published later on our channels. Yeah, very welcome to share your name, put your name in the group chat, tell us who you are so we know who's here. Please mute yourself during the session whilst you're not speaking and use the chat function for any questions, and there will be space for this after the presentations. Please remember this is a safe space for minoritized people, and we don't tolerate any form of abuse. We do encourage challenging and constructive conversation, but people's lived experiences are not up for debate. Yeah, and any breaches, we will follow up on those later and remove you. If you do have any serious concerns, yeah, would like to make a safeguarding complaint later, please contact Julian Rosser at hapcymruafrica.wales. Okay, so we'll look at the agenda. I will try to keep it brief with an introduction to Big Give, and then we will have a couple of case studies. Nick, who's a co-founder of NEO, a creative agency, and is formerly a trustee with Dolan Fairmew, um, will share his speak about his experience, of running the campaign on behalf of Dolan Fairmew. That is a they're quite small volunteer-led organization. I should mention I'm also involved with this organization. I'm a current trustee and used to be a volunteer at the time, or had just started as a volunteer really at the time we ran the campaign. Yeah, so that would be from coming from that place of having very low capacity and yeah, not having done one before, a campaign before. As opposed to, I guess, Janet Lawares, a director of programs at Bees for Development, who are a bigger organization, uh, a bigger at least, yeah, and working, yeah, on a more professional level, as if they have paid staff and yeah, obviously have um more capacities to do this. And yeah, she will share her experiences of having successfully participated in the campaign. And then we also have Tabitha Ndiaye with us from the Waterloo Foundation to add that perspective of a funder. So the Waterloo Foundation has collaborated with Big Give for not sure how many years, but a few years, I think, as a champion, and that will become more clear what that means. But I thought it might be useful to, um, yeah, to share some of that experiences as well. Right, and then we will have space for questions. Okay, going to continue with a few details about Byd-eang. It's a UK-based match funding charity. It was founded in 2007, and it's really based on the key principle of that donations are being doubled. And that works. So when a public donates to a charity through a Byd-eang campaign, then the Byd-eang champions will match that donation. So yeah, then you have twice the impact. And the champions can be philanthropists, foundations, or corporates. Yeah, we'll explain that a bit more throughout the session. I think it would become more clear. The biggest and flagship campaign is the Byd-eang Christmas Challenge, probably the most well-known one. They do have other campaigns, including the Women and Girls Match Fund running in October, and the Green Match Fund. I think it's renamed now to Earth Race, running in April. And there's also the Small Charity Week. That's a very new thing. So they're piloting that this year. And sorry, yeah, so it's the first time for running for the first time this year. It might be really interesting for, particularly small organizations. As the name says, it's for really a really low threshold, so it's a minimum of 5,000 annual income. I think. But that being said, so this year it's only for activities carried out in Wales. That might change in the future. I think, Tabitha, you could say more about that, but I think that's the main point there. Yeah, so I will just say a little more about the Byd-eang Christmas Challenge, which is the UK's biggest collaborative fundraising campaign. You can see the numbers there. 2024, there were 1,267 participating charities, and altogether 44.7 million raised. So yeah, it is quite a big event, and it's spread on 7 days every year in early December. It's got quite a long kind of stage leading up to that. So applications are in the summer, and this year will be the 4th of July. So not giving you too much time, but at least we're in May still, so it's possible. To be eligible to apply, you have to be a UK registered charity, and you have to have an annual income of at least 25,000. And charities working overseas must comply with the relevant regulators' guidance on protecting charities from harm. You can find more information on that on the Byd-eang website. And lastly, you will have to register on the Byd-eang website, but yeah, it's free. It's fairly easy. So the Christmas challenge is based on a pledge model. I don't know. I was going to show this video. I'm not sure it's useful. I mean, it's useful. I'm not sure it's necessary to see it. I think the pledge model. I mean, what it means really is that the donations are doubled through match funding provided by pledges. So those come from the charity themselves, and are usually are kind of key supporters from the charity, and then also the Byd-eang champions. So those together will match the donations. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I lost my thread there. Yeah, so the process, how it works. Firstly, the Byd-eang will secure the match funding from the champions, and then there's a phase where charities apply, and then we'll have to find their pledges and collect those. In the third stage, charities are being selected and checked as well. And then it's a time for marketing, and just to know that Byd-eang also provides some resources for that on their website. And lastly, it's a campaign in December. Okay. Right. I think I'm just going to hand over to Nick now to start with his view as a former trustee from Delafamio. Okay, stop sharing my screen. Okay, over to you, Nick.
Can you see my screen okay? Yeah,
Yes.
good. Brilliant. Okay, well, lovely to be here with you today. I shall do my best to recall an event that took place over 5 years ago now. But we were very fortunate that we put together a case study at the time that I've been able to draw on with some details that weren't quite completed at the time, but let's see how we go. But anyway, I'm Nick Christofor. As Lena said, I'm the founder of a creative agency called Neo. We've been supporting purpose-driven organisations for over 20 years with their brands, campaigns, communications, and more recently with their culture to help bring about the change they're looking for. I'm also a trustee of WCIA, which is a partner of Hub Cymru Africa. And as Lena mentioned, I was a former trustee and colleague at Fermier. But that was back in 2016 to 2023. So, the Big Give Challenge 2020 was where this case study focuses. As I said, it's quite some time ago, so I'll do my best to provide as much detail as I can, but hopefully Lena can plug any gaps from her memory too. So what we'll cover in, how long have we got, by the way, Lena? I've forgotten the timings on this. Just to make sure I don't run too slowly on this or too
Yeah,
quickly.
15 minutes if you can. Well,
Wonderful.
we've got time. We've got time till 1:15, so we're quite good with time right now. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So well, a little bit of background on Fermier, and then we'll look at how we plan the campaign, communications and the activation. Then we'll look at perhaps some of the outcomes that emerged and importantly what we learned as part of that process. So Fermier was set up more than 20 years ago, specifically to partner with communities in eastern Uganda, with a focus on young people and families. And the work they do is around permaculture, skills training, essential community development. So they've raised funds over the years to install water supplies, create building projects for the most recent one that I recall, and Lena can probably give more of an update of what's been going on, is a skills training centre that was built just before, or was beginning to be built just as I ended my trusteeship, and it's helped to start social enterprises. It's also got a demonstration farm and runs these skill training sessions at centres. So, planning the campaign. It's worth starting with a little bit of context, really. As Lena said, very small charity, completely volunteer run. Fundraising had traditionally been at a very local level. The demographic of donors very much in the older group, not very comfortable with technology, certainly not used to giving money online. Donations for previous activities were typically by check and cash at local events and so on. So this was completely out of the comfort zone of the trustee and volunteer group at the time. But we saw it as a real opportunity to not only raise some funds through the campaign, but use it as a way of helping to transform the way that we worked as a group. So that was a real focus of ours as we moved into the campaign. As with any campaign, we started with understanding the need. So raising funds was a big part of this. It was the middle of the pandemic. So there were some specific challenges in Uganda that we were hoping to help resolve. So our partner in Uganda gave us the picture and essentially decided what was needed on their side. So things like washstands, seedlings for growing food, skills training sessions were a constant part of their work, and they wanted to continue with that. And electricity supplies being intermittent, solar lamps were a big part of children's learning. So they wanted to raise funds for those elements. So as Lena said, there's a bit of a process with the Big Give that was, again, very new to us, and we had to try and get our heads around. So starting with that pledge part of the process. So I believe at the time it was, we had to raise, we set ourselves a target, and then we had to raise 25% of that target through pledges, with pledgers who were willing to give at least £100. So that goes into the application. Hopefully the application is compelling, and we're really pleased to say that it was, and we're fortunate to have the Waterloo Foundation, as it happens, be our champion funder that year. So we were really, really pleased with that. But the great thing about the campaign is it really encourages people to give more, because they feel that their donation is going to go so much further. And it is also a really great motivator for the fundraising team, because we know that, one donation is going to be doubled. So it does really mentally, it does change and make it more exciting as a fundraising opportunity. So the first step was then to create some content. Our Ugandan partners took photos of the project gifts that we were trying to raise funds for, shared some stories, they created some videos. We used some of previous content that had been created to tell the story of some of the previous work, to give people context in the kind of campaign giving. On reflection, some of the content was useful, and it certainly helped to sort of feed the campaign materials. But it was all rather quick and rapid for us, and we certainly could have benefited from a bit more time in crafting those stories and supporting our partners, and giving our partners more time to pull together that content. And so on a broader level, that was a sort of consistent challenge as a volunteer run organisation with partners in Uganda, trying to for them to find time in their schedules, and for us also to create that content. So I don't know what it's like now. I don't know if Lena will comment on that later, but certainly while I was a trustee, that was one of the biggest challenges in terms of communications. So as it happened, there was the Hub Cymru Africa mentoring program during the period when we were thinking about the campaign. So we felt it was a really good opportunity, again, for us to build capacity, to learn, to develop as a group. And we applied to the program, and we're really pleased that we were successful and taken on board. We learned a lot through that program, which also contributed to the campaign, because we were able to use our mentor at Hub Cymru Africa as a kind of a sounding board, and to provide input and advice on our approach to the campaign, which was extremely valuable. As well as that, we were really fortunate to be introduced to two volunteers, one of whom is facilitating today, and that really helped us build some capacity, which was a real challenge for us at the time, and some skills, brought some new skills to the team, and created a real kind of a bit of camaraderie and a bit of spirit around the campaign, which was, for me in particular, as somebody that was holding the communications piece, really helped motivate me to do more too. And it was an exciting time for two people to come in together, to go on that journey together, and to be part of something that ultimately was going to be a really successful campaign. So we started thinking about audiences and how do we reach those audiences with the campaign. There were some specific challenges I mentioned around shifting mindsets and behaviours of our existing supporter groups. So there was some messaging and thinking needed around that. How do we encourage them to move to online donation? Because without the money going through the Big Give platform, it could not be considered as a match funded opportunity, a match funded donation. We created this kind of supporter map, starting with the people very closest to us, and worked our way outwards. You know, who was within our network, how could we reach them, and then who was outside of it that we would attempt to connect with. So that's all the foundation of our targets, if you like, in terms of campaign. As I mentioned, transformation was at the heart of this. So trustees adopted digital tools for the very first time. Some of them had never been on a video call before. They certainly hadn't used Miro and collaboration tools like that, and were encouraged to use Google Docs in sharing documents more than they had before. So onto the communications. So there was, as with any of our previous campaigns or mini projects, if you like, there was the local element which remained. So trustees and local volunteers continued to set up stalls at Christmas markets and events, distributed leaflets and posters, wrote to their people within and businesses within and outside of their network in the local community, and wrote articles for local publications and so on. So that was a kind of something that we did as a matter of course, and that formed part of this campaign too. And then there was the new stuff, the online activities. So ahead of the campaign, we had to consider how our website would work in this new environment. Traditionally a kind of static piece, it needed to become much more dynamic and enable people to engage with it and donate, and or at least link through to the donation platform at Big Give. So we created a landing page with very clear links to the gifts we were raising funds for, and links and things associated with that. You're looking quizzically, Lena. Is there something there that
You just
isn't
cut
clear?
out for me for a second.
Okay.
But I
All
think
right. Do I need to repeat that for
no,
anybody else too?
I think it's okay.
Okay, great. Um, uh, the next part of this was the social media network. Again, we had a very small network in our social media platforms, and if we're going to have that wider reach to encourage new donors, we had to build on that. So we started by identifying, following, contacting thought leaders and people in our space that had much larger networks, followers on their platforms. And we were quite lucky that many of them did follow us back, and some of them shared our content, which certainly increased our reach. So we created a social media plan. We were on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, although we used that a bit less than the other platforms, I'd say. We prepared a core set of posts in advance in Welsh and English. That really helped us as a busy group of people trying to do this around our jobs, so that we could get things out there. I think we even used one of the sort of scheduling platforms for some of it, if I recall. And yeah, I think we also added to that with some more ad hoc pieces as we had time and interesting things to say on the platforms. And we found Canva was a really useful tool for creating images, animated GIFs are really easy to make. We're able to use it to automate the resizing of images and posts for the different platforms. So a really good tool, and quite an easy learning curve, not a steep learning curve for anybody that's considering needing something like that. And we also invested in some very, very low level Facebook ads. We actually only spent £60 on Facebook to see how effective it would be. It did actually reach around 4,000 new people according to Facebook report. So inevitably, new people would have visited our website. as a result of that, and maybe they were some of the donors that gave. So what did we achieve? We set ourselves an initial target of £5,000, and we based that on previous local campaigns for other projects, with a little bit of ambition, but a very small amount of ambition on increasing on those. And as it happened, we ended up raising 3,000, just under 3,500 in on loan donations through the platform. That was also topped up by gift aid on the donations. As we had secured the champion and the pledges, they were part of the match fund up to the value of £5,000, because that's the target we set in the Big Give platform. So that's the amount the maximum amount of pledging that you can get. So slightly complicated nuances around this, so it may not make complete sense, but if you watch the video that Lena pointed to, maybe it will be a bit clearer then. And then we had some more gift aid from pledges, so we were really pleased with the 7,000 we raised. We also raised an additional 4,000 from off the platform, so it was with significantly higher than previous campaigns. So a few facts and stats. We exceeded our target by over 20%. 1/3 of the overall target was raised within the first 12 hours of the campaign. So it's quite interesting how how important it is to be ready to go at that beginning of that week that you have to raise the funds. By the 4th day, we'd hit our target of 5,000, and we had a few days to spare. So 79 donations, 28 from which, importantly for us, were from new donors. So we built some new relationships, which was a real core objective of ours. 9 of the donations were over £100, and then we were able to contact those people that agreed for us to contact them and ask them if they would like to be a pledger for the following year when we went again. So impacts the campaign. This is where it is a little bit sketchy, because we didn't really have a lot of the data at the time we made the original case study. So I've had to go back through emails. So this is slightly sketchy, but I believe we raised campaign income that funded 260 families. That was from one of our partners in Uganda, which included the washstands, the solar lamps, tree seedlings, maize seeds, and skills training sessions, along with some materials. And other kind of impacts. So as I said, it was a real catalyst in the changing the way that we worked and communicated. It reached those new audiences that we were looking for. It also made us be a bit clearer in how we communicate and start to tell our story in a way that mattered more to people. There was that behaviour change piece that I mentioned around, trying to encourage our local supporters to not give us a check, to not give us cash, but to go online and make that online donation. A little note we sent out, a thank you, which we think is really important with these things, just to remind people and to tell them and keep them informed of the impact of their work. We shared the case study with them too. So what did we learn? It was a super steep learning curve for everybody involved, but a good one. We realised that we needed to be much better prepared at the beginning of the campaign. I mentioned that those first 12 hours and how important they were. But it also gave us a bit of confidence, and we were a little bit more ambitious about what we did the following year in terms of targets. It helped us identify gaps in our storytelling and story gathering processes that I've mentioned. And yeah, that part of that sort of early planning was also around engaging with our networks much earlier too around this. And then another part of this was how do we on a regular basis communicate with our supporters. We were using spreadsheets and so on, and recognized there was a need for a CRM. Again, I don't know if that's something that ever got implemented, but it was certainly something that we felt was needed at the time. That's me. I hope that was useful, but I'm happy to take any questions and try to answer them with whatever memories I have of that time.
Thank you, Nick. I think we'll leave questions yeah, we'll collate them in the end and have a yeah, collective question.
Feel
space.
free
Yeah.
to correct anything that was there,
I think you
Lena.
covered it really well. Yeah. I mean, I was very new and this was a very kind of exciting, big thing to be involved with right away, but certainly felt quite powerful to be part of. And yeah, I think, you know, doing that in a team was definitely a huge part of why it felt I think that so powerful and why um uh yeah how we managed to succeed in it, I think. And having a comms plan and things like that really made a huge difference, I think. Yeah, and just to emphasize that point of around storytelling and how important it is to collaborate with your partners on that, or hopefully, yeah, being really led by partners on that. I think that there's potential to build on that, or that's something I think should be a focus really of anyone participating. So the way you represent um, the work that's being done and the impact. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more, that could be said, but I'm conscious of time. So I think we'll press on and I'll, hand over to Janet now with I'm sure a different perspective, but yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Nick, for that very nice case study. Slightly put me to shame, actually. I've got a few pointers anyway, but I do have a couple of slides. So let me just find those. Share. There we are. Share. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay. So yes, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to talk about the Big Give. Our, the fundraising manager is not available today. She's busy doing some fundraising somewhere in London at the Chelsea Flower Show. So I am having to stand in, and otherwise she would be able to give you a lot more insights. So it's going to be a bit of an overview from me. So we've been engaged with the Big Give for quite a number of years now, and we did start with a moderate target, and we have increased our target over the years, and we've stuck with it because we've found that the Big Give really has served us well. And I'll explain a little bit more about it. So I think we've already heard a little bit about how it works. Just a recap. So we earlier on in the year, when it's important to build up this matching pot, and the traditional model is that you raise some funds from pledges, and then if you're fortunate, the Big Give will match the pledge amount to make a matching pot. And then that matching pot together comprises half of the total. And then you can raise the equivalent to the matching plot and drawing against that matching plot pound for pound during the online week. It's important to mention that the pledges are usually drawn from people you already know, people who are already known to you, or I mean, that's, it's your responsibility to find the pledges. So it could be existing donors, corporates, friends and relations. So that's your responsibility to get the pledges. The champion funding is the big, if you're selected, then the Big Give take responsibility for finding a champion. And so that's really, like, sometimes we call that sort of the new money, because that's we wouldn't have access to that if we weren't in the Big Give. You could argue that we might if the people who are already amongst our supporter base, if we've gone to them and asked them to support a campaign for the pledge, they may have supported a campaign with or without the big give. You don't necessarily know, but the champion funding is what you might call the new money, or the money that is not, that's from outside your circle, if you like. And then the online campaign, again, that's really down to you, or it's down to us to reach out to our supporters to donate during that online week. During the online week, the donations that are made online, and everything that Nick said is correct. Donations have to be made through the Big Give website during those specific dates. So every donation made there will be matched pound for pound against your matching pot. But interestingly, it actually matches against your pledges first before your champion. So if you, like in this example I presented here, 5, 5, 10, if during the online campaign, for whatever reason, you only raised 5, then you would match that £5 pound for pound with your pledges. And it's only once you've raised the first 5 can you then match pound for pound against the champion. So during the week, when we do the Big Give campaign, we're looking at the donations that are coming into Bees for Development on the Big Give site. It's always kind of quite an exciting milestone when you've matched against your pledges and now you're matching against your champion, because we feel like the champion is like the new money, whereas the pledges were kind of already a little bit amongst our supporters. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. The real strong benefit. So we've stuck with the Big Give now for probably more than 10 years, and we now participate both during the Christmas and the Green Match. And we found that it's a really big boost to our fundraising. And why is because it gives us a reason to approach your supporters. A campaign, yes, we could have a campaign of our own, if you like, but the Big Give does provide this structure. It provides the matching opportunity. It provides the matching site. When somebody donates on the website, it says, it's instant. It says match funds available. Okay, so that's like a little incentive. So if you give 5, this will become 10, and you'll have the gift aid on top. And it's a really good feel factor, good feel factor for the donor. And the Big Give does that for us. So if someone gives £10, it says, oh, amazing, your charity has received. If you give 10, they receive 20 plus gift aid if the person gift aided. So I don't know what that is, but could be, 10 becomes 25 or 26 or something. And, that is, people like that. People like matching campaigns. It also gives us an incentive to what we call sign-ups during the year, because we have to take, when it comes to the online week, we have to take that campaign and put it in front of our supporters, whether they're new people or old people. Not old people, you know what I mean? Current people. So it gives us an incentive throughout the year. These become milestones for us, for our fundraising sort of strategy, really. So we might have an event earlier on in the year. So the challenge then is, well, we need to get people to sign up to our mailing list, so that because when you meet somebody for a first time, it's not an easy ask just to go up to somebody and say, can you give us a donation? but it's a much easier ask to say, well, would you like to sign up to our mailing list? And then once they're on the mailing list, we'll send them our newsletter, so they will be hopefully, long before we come to the campaign, we've already given them news. This is what we're doing. This is who we are. This is an impact of our work, and we haven't even actually asked them for any money yet. And then, as we get closer to the campaign, we start telling people, we're joining in the Big Give Christmas Challenge. This year we're raising money for our wonderful project in such and such a place. And it's preparation for the campaign, and then we've got a good list of people to take the campaign to during that week. As I mentioned, the champion money is what we kind of call the new money, or it's from outside our existing sort of portfolio of supporters, and then of course is also gift aidable. So it really, and yeah, I think it provides a strong, as I said, milestone target, and it requires prep. It does require quite a lot of prep throughout the year. And I mean, now, of course, because it's sort of institutionalized in our approach, we're always thinking, oh, this is an opportunity to get people to sign up. Maybe, we might be talking to maybe a company or a corporate donor, and we might be thinking, oh, I wonder if they might it's a good ask for them to join, to become a pledger. So we're always sort of thinking about these things in advance. So yes, you have to apply and submit a project proposal. But the important thing to think about a project proposal is that, yes, this is describing the project, but this is not a strong competition like many funding, applications are strongly competitive. Your project proposals allows you to participate. And as Nick says, it's the project proposal which then allows the Big Give to match you to a champion. But once you're in, or once your project proposal has been accepted, you kind of have to shift really to thinking about the campaign. And these are not exactly the same thing. So not every project or project proposal is good as a campaign. So we quite often will think about things, we don't necessarily, we used to, that's what I'm trying to say, is we always used to sort of start by thinking about the project and the project proposal. And this is what we want to do, this is where we want to work, this is the impact we're going to have. And then we'd be accepted, and then we'd think, oh, we've now got to turn it into a campaign. Do we have have we got a compelling title? And sometimes we go back to our project proposal, and it's like some long sentence about we want to reach women-headed households in northern Ethiopia and help them start beekeeping. That's not a campaign title. And then you think, oh, it might be something else, and we can't even turn it into a campaign title. So do you have a good strap line? Do you have the assets, which I think Nick was talking about, the stories, the images? So we kind of tend now to kind of try and do these things at the same time. So as we're preparing the project proposal, we're thinking, can we make a good campaign out of this? Do we feel like this has got a good campaign title? Can we make a good campaign strapline? Do we have good imagery? Do we have good stories? Because when it comes to actually the online campaign week, the people who donate don't read your project proposal. They just look at the campaign materials. Our campaigns really revolve around email mailing. And we do lots of other things like the social media, and we produce, and the website that Nick also mentioned, we'll have a website page. We quite often produce little postcards. In October, we quite often go to the National Honey Show. So that's a good opportunity for us to interact with lots of beekeepers. So we take little postcards, the big give, remember the date. But it's very difficult to know whether those things really translate into donations. I mean, we always do it, and we believe it does, and we believe it's all part of it. But at the end of the day, it's the email mailing that is actually the trigger for the donations. So having a mailing list of people that we can send an email to and tell them about the campaign during that week is absolutely the key. And we know that because you can look at it. You'll send out an email at such and such a time, and the donations come in for the next, I don't know, half a day, and then they stop coming in. And then you send out another email 2 days later, always in that same week, obviously. And then there's another spike in donations. So people respond to being asked to donate to the campaign. And if you don't ask, you don't get. And the more people you ask, we believe the more you get. So having that mailing list is absolutely critical. We try not to, obviously, there's a danger of bombarding people with emails. That's a danger, that's a concern, that's a worry. And we try really hard to, if someone donates, we take them out of the next mailing. So that's quite a bit of work. It's not like we don't just send out another mailing 2 days later. We take out anybody who's donated, or at least we try to, so that we don't ask them again. And
Janet, sorry to interrupt. Do you think you could wrap up in a couple of minutes?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So yes, I think that's just explaining about how we do the email mailing. So we try not to bombard, but actually it is quite intensive. And then the other points to consider, as already mentioned, only donations made on the BitKeep site will count. And that can sometimes be a problem. We have had people send us checks in the post, say, please, can you put this towards the campaign? People ring up, they want to donate in other ways, and it's not possible. Pledgers must not donate during the online week. We've had that almost every year, even though we tell them, because they can't be a pledge and then match their own pledge. That's just not the way it works. So you have to write and tell them not to do it. And sometimes they think they're donating, sometimes they're thinking that you're giving them the pledge, but you just have to tell them not to do it. The email campaign is absolutely crucial, needs to be planned. We do data analysis, like Nick said. We want to look at how many people are new or how many people have donated before. We thank people. The big give sends out an auto thank you, but we tend to do our own as well. So, and as soon as we can thank people, we try and do that. What did we do with the money? We have a monthly newsletter, so we very quickly follow up. Well, not quickly, it's not realistic. We haven't actually spent the money yet, but at a suitable point in a few months' time, we start telling people what we did with the money. There's a question sometimes that raises about in our finance team about whether the money that comes in is restricted or unrestricted, and we regard this as money that is restricted for that particular project. But it's not we tend to put it in our it's a bit of a halfway house for us. In our accounts, it tends to be it's tracked against that particular project. Yeah, I think that's it. That was it. That's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you
Stop
very
sharing.
much, Jenna. That was a lot of really useful points. Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah, we'll continue. Sorry, yeah, no, I thought it was a hand. It was Julian clapping. Okay. Great. I will pass on to Tabitha. If you're ready, do you want me to share your presentation?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Have you got
Okay.
that I emailed you this morning?
Pardon?
Have you got one that I emailed you this morning?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Sorry, just need to find it again. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so let's try not to make the same mistake as before.
So thanks for inviting me and reassuringly listening to Nick and Janet. I think there's quite a bit of overlap in the impressions of participating in the Big Give. Obviously, their impressions come from their own involvement in the Big Give, whereas I'm here talking from the perspective of an organisation which has acted as a Big Give Christmas Challenge champion. So tried to take a little bit of a step back and look at the Big Give over the years, and then try and sort of pull together some of the feedback we've had from organisations we've supported over the years. And as I said, I think some of that will correspond to what you've already heard from Nick and Janet, and perhaps a couple of different angles or ways of thinking about that as well. So just first of all to say that the Waterloo Foundation, so we have been a long time supporter of the Big Give, particularly through the Christmas Challenge. So between 2011 and 2026, we have had a contribution, so we contribute 100,000 each year. Majority of that goes into portfolio, so that provides the champion funds to our portfolio. And we do give a small donation also to Big Give to help them cover their costs of actually running the event. And we typically have a portfolio of around 10 to 18 charities. In terms of how we select this, it's often charities that we do know, because in terms of due diligence, in terms of thinking about which organisations we want to support and the work that they're doing, the Big Give isn't a particularly effective way of getting to know an organisation. So I think we're less likely to fund an organisation that's completely unknown to us. But it has quite a nice way of funding some organisations which sit outside our sort of key priorities or sort of our real organisations that may be getting grant funding. So for example, Dolan Cymru and Bees for Development, they're not maybe classic fits for what we might support under grant funding, but it's a nice way of supporting particularly local organisations and organisations doing the great work that you're doing. Having said that, when we're looking across the portfolio, we do generally look to support across our 4 areas of interest. So that's WASH, education, sexual reproductive health and nutrition. We do prioritise supporting smaller and small mid-sized charities. So not so much. And I think part of that comes back to thinking about this as providing an opportunity for small organisations often doing their first online fundraiser. We see that sort of size of charity as being an organisation which particularly benefits from participating. In contrast to some really large INGOs who also do take part in the Big Give. And then we also typically look at a maximum of around 50,000 per charity. And if you cast your minds back to the calculations that were shown on previous slides, you'll know that 15k from a champion matched by 15k from a pledge, and then doubled with the online donations. So that means it's a total of 60k total fundraising budget. However, more typically, as I said, we're funding these small mid-sized charities, and so on average, actually, we're often supporting at the level of sort of 6 to 10k-ish. So most of the today, I'm going to talk particularly about the Christmas challenge, because that's what we've funded regularly each year. However, we have a bit more ad hocly supported the Green Match Fund, Women's Fund, and some deck appeals, sort of as a occasionally, but not consistently across the years. Lena, could you go on to the next page, please? So just generally, I mean, as I said, we've funded them since 2011, so 14 years. And I think it's interesting just to maybe say it's definitely increased in terms of size over the years. I mean, this is showing cumulative funding, but as you can see, sort of the steepness of the curve is showing the amount that's being raised by Big Give. I think it's getting an increasingly visible profile. And so as well for charities here at the Waterloo Foundation, as well as the value that we're giving and supporting the individual charities who are participating and using this for fundraising, they also quite like the Big Give in and of itself. It is a visible, positive force for raising awareness and support of aid, generally charitable work, which against a backdrop at the moment of not always being the easiest sector to work in, diminishing funds from sources, also sort of in terms of how it's viewed in the press, just seeing this as a generally good and positive event and organisation to support. And then, Lena, if you just jump onto the next one. And then that's just sort of culminating. So these are some of the numbers from last year. And so you've got over 1,500 organisations that are applying, increasing each year. And so that's 10% increase from the year before. I mean, they talk about the median income, and you can see that's 800,000. It's not a small charity. I would say that the range is very large. There's still quite a lot of smaller charities. I think, as Lena said, you've got to have over 25,000 as a minimum. There are a lot of still smaller, but then that's pulled up, as I said, by there being also a lot of very large. So quite a range of charities do participate. There are now 38 champions who are supporting a portfolio of charities within the Christmas Challenge, and there's a total of just under £10 million available to participating charities, which is great, and I think sort of flags up the opportunities that are there for organisations that are interested to be involved, and particularly going back to what Janet was saying, of seeing this as the new funding, that's a significant amount of new funding that is available to charities. Yeah, so then I think just in terms of lessons or thinking about what we've heard, or no, first of all, what we've learned from actually participating in the Big Give, is that we have seen over the years, and I would say particularly sort of from about 5 years ago, or up until about 5 years ago, there was quite a few changes in the process of participating in the Christmas Challenge. I would say that's changed less more recently. I think they sort of feel like they've got a process which works and which charities appreciate. But prior to that, it was quite nice that we were able to be a bit of a in-between from having feedback from the charities who we were supporting to the Big Give. And so I think earlier on, for example, they started off with a setup whereby champions had a particular funding pot, and then the organisations within your portfolio competed for that. So there wasn't a particular amount per charity, which made it much more competitive between charities. And I think, and there was a lot of negative pushback from charities saying they felt that was made an unfair playing field. And I think you've heard from both Nick and Janet that it isn't the easiest thing to manage, and maybe especially for those smaller charities, put them at an unfair advantage and made it a less positive experience participating. And now that's changed, so each charity has their own ring-fenced pot, which makes it easier to plan and everything around that. And then for another one, for example, they've also more recently, I believe, brought in from feedback saying that some supporters either individual supporters that just find it difficult to do online donations, or perhaps being able to also incorporate donations from corporates or from other from grant funding can't be part of the online donations during that week. But now I believe they've incorporated having the organizations can register a CAF account, and you can feed contributions into that account, which is then ready to be, so people can pay into an actual bank account, which can then be used to funnel that into the online donations during that week. So sort of facilitating being able to raise money during that 1 week charity or online fundraiser more easily. So all of that is really just to say, you know, it's gone through a process, and generally the feedback we get from our participating charities, and Byd-eang themselves, they get feedback from across the charities, has been positive. They sort of talk about an average donation of being around 178. I would say it's also useful to think about that being sort of an average, and probably there's likely a big range in there. 83% of charities are hitting their targets, which is great. 95% of match funds are used, so it indicates that charities are really they're doing well in terms of planning for the level of funds they're looking to raise, and then really making the best of the match funding that's available. And then just saying that there are a few charities that really use this to raise quite considerable funds as well. Let me pop on to the next slide, Luna. And then thinking back, so this is really thinking about the value to participate in charities, and I think this is where there is probably some crossover with the earlier talks from John Cymru and Byd Development. So I think two areas where we see value is around resilience. So this is helping charities build existing or new income streams, and then sort of overlapping and related to that is also helping to build profile. And these are two of the things that the Byd-eang have sort of said, you know, this is the value of participating. Feedback from some of our grantees give a slightly more nuanced impression of that. So I just put sort of colour here where green to agree, orange where it's sort of a little bit sort of some question marks. So I think some things that we've heard back is around support from existing supporters increasing. Some organisations have said, yes, that has been true. You know, having that match funding there means their existing supporters are giving bigger donations. Others have said they're not, that's a little bit, they're not quite so sure. It may just be that those existing supporters we're going to provide that donation anyway, and they decide to give that during the Christmas challenge rather than at another point in the year or at a different fundraising campaign. However, I think we heard from nearly all organisations that we spoke to or we hear back from that it's a really valuable tool for reinforcing engagement. And again, I think I don't really need to talk too much more on that. Janet and Nick really made that point. It's a really useful way to keep engagement going with existing supporters and sort of build that up to the end of year purpose of getting contributions in. And then on terms of the new supporters, you know, I think the Byd-eang says 94% get donations from new supporters, which on the surface sounds great. And I think, Nick, you know, that was certainly an experience that you spoke about, that quite a few of the donations that you got coming in were from new supporters. Again, we had a bit of a mixed bag of feedback. Some said the same. Others said, yes, they may have got one or two contributions from new supporters. So, you know, they would have been part of that 94%, but that wasn't the main part of the donations they had. And I think this really comes back to the type of campaign that you run, and I'll come on to that a little bit in a later slide. But again, sort of the marked in green was that all the organisations we spoke to reported an increase in visibility and profile. So this real just sort of making yourself more visible, having an online presence seemed to be a real advantage of participating in the Byd-eang. Next one. And that's really, and I think this one is sort of related to that and talking about the skills that you generate through participating. A lot of the organizations, and as I said, we often support smaller organizations that may be doing this as a first example of online fundraising for themselves. And they said it was a really effective first step into online fundraising. The Big Give alongside, on the platform, they do provide resources to support how to run your campaign. And quite a few of the organizations that participated early on, or sort of some of our first early portfolios, not only have they continued to participate each year in the Big Give, but they've also gone on to maybe do a standalone campaign on the Big Give or to do their own campaigns sort of outside of the Big Give. But many of them have said it was participating in the Christmas challenge of the Big Give that gave them the experience, gave them the skills and the confidence to then go on and continue to use this as a tool. And I think but all of these, yes, there is value in participating, but the time requirements are certainly not negligible and something which needs to be thought about, particularly in smaller organizations where perhaps there aren't, where it's run by volunteers or where there's sort of limited capacity, and then it's certainly something to think about. So three recommendations, the last 3 slides, I think. One is thinking about how to set your targets. So the details have already been gone over. You've got your pledge fund, you've got your champion fund. Together that makes up the match pot, and then you've got your online donations. As Janet was saying, the pledge fund is used up first before you can access the champion funds. So you do want to be quite careful in hedging your bets. You do want to go beyond what you've raised as a pledge. So I think especially in a first year, we often see organizations being a little bit conservative in what they raise to make sure that they actually hit their targets. And it's worth mentioning as well that you don't want to go too much over it. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess once you go over your target, you are also paying a fee. I think that's still the setup on those donations made through the Big Give site. So if people are going to be making donations anyway, once you've gone past your match funding target, it can sometimes be useful to then signpost them and say, great, we've met our target. If you still want to donate, maybe donate directly rather than the Big Give site. Yep, I think that's that one. And then just thinking about planning your project. So some people sort of said initially when they participated, they really did it around a project. They'd sort of think about it as if it was a grant, writing out a project plan. But increasingly, and I think again this sort of speaks to what Janet was saying, that it's not a grant application. It is a campaign. And one thing that maybe is sort of helpful to flag up is that you don't have to apply for a restricted purpose. My understanding, and this is something we check with Big Give each year, is that it can be unrestricted for an organization. And I think this is particularly important if you've got existing supporters who may be giving unrestricted donations throughout the year, and you're saying, well, actually, could you donate during our Christmas through our Christmas appeal, because then we can double that. But what you don't want to do is sort of move across what might have been an unrestricted donation to a restricted pot. So something to think about, so that you can really make as far as I'm aware, your Big Give appeal very broad to the charities, to the charities sort of broader remit. And not necessarily thinking that as a project as such, but really sort of thinking about what makes what grabs people's attention as a campaign. And then I think it's the last slide. And then this is really just talking about the fundraising campaign, which is really the key part of the work, and saying there's a lot to think about. Talking about the different types of value that you can get from participating in the Christmas challenge, it's worth having a think and saying what might be a priority for your organization, because that might actually help to think about how you want to shape your campaign or the work that you put into it. Are you more interested in sort of engaging an existing supporter network, continuing that through and getting donations from them? Is it more around reaching new people actually during the event? Is it around just getting experience of running an event like this? Some other organizations spoke about the pledge and said, well, that was actually quite a useful introduction to them to also reach out to new corporate partners who might be interested to come on board as a pledge partner. So yeah, I think really just saying, think through what it is you want to get out of the campaign. Start early. Again, I think that's been reiterated in other talks. Engage with the Big Give resources, and think about the level of efforts that's going to be needed, and sort of think through whether that's actually a cost, whether what you want to get out of it and the energy that needs to go into that is cost effective. And the last point is just around data collection. Think about anything you want to learn from participation and make sure that you've got the processes or mechanisms in place to draw out those learnings as effectively as possible to help in future fundraising events. I think that's everything. Yeah, I can sort of pass over that. I think there was a general question. Yes.
Thanks, Tabitha. Yeah, that's great. I think we are running out of time really now. I don't know if people are happy to stick around a few more minutes if you feel like you have questions or anything is unanswered. There was a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if they have been that's okay. That's great. If they have been answered, or if people feel like they've been answered. I think, well, thank you, Janet, for replying. Jenny, do you feel like it's clear now?
Yes, thank you. That's clear. Can I ask another one while so a question for Tabitha. The Waterloo Foundation's existing commitments pot to the existing charities. So that means that's already committed. It's not going to the Waterloo Foundation isn't offering champion funding for any new small organisations that might appear in the through the application procedure, or have I got that wrong?
Sorry,
yeah, I said that badly. Let me try again. So is the Waterloo Foundation money already committed to as a champion to the pot that you self-select, in advance? It's not available to new peoples that might be putting in applications, new small Welsh organisations that might have never done this before, might yet put in an application to the Big Give, but they wouldn't get Waterloo Foundation as their champion. Is that right? Because Waterloo Foundation has already decided which ones they're champions of.
So how it works is that from the process from our side is that trustees here agree that 100,000 pot. So I think we've agreed this year and next year, and that happens on an annual basis or every 3 years. If those funds are going out, we then notify the Big Give that we are providing a pot of 98,000, say, and then they come back to us with a long list. So the applications then actually come in. We let them know, what kind of organisations we're prioritising. They provide us with a long list of participating charities. We select from that long list. It may be sometimes that we sometimes go back and say, oh, we haven't seen that organisation on it, but we think that they're participating and we've funded them before. Sometimes it's that they've been picked up by another champion. So they give us the long list and we select from that long list, but we don't have access. So no champion that's how the Big Give manages the champions. So I don't think, as far as I'm aware, that any champion is then sort of able to, outside of that long list, is sort of picking up other charities. But of course, being a small Welsh charity that's something that we do look at and support within the Waterloo Foundation portfolio. And something which might be interesting coming from this as well is maybe with Hub Cymru Africa, organisations within the network could let Hub Cymru Africa know if they're looking to participate, and then Hub Cymru Africa can sort of maybe compile that and let the Waterloo Foundation know who is participating, because then that's an easier way for us to sort of know which local organisations are there, and we could inquire with the Big Give if that can be part of our long list.
Thank you. And a couple of questions were in the chat, but from Sue, but Nick has responded to those in the chat. I hope that's sufficient. Any other question that I may have missed? Let me just go back, but I don't see anything right now. And I don't see any hands either.
Oh, can I ask?
Sure. Yeah.
Is there a penalty to not? So Janet answered the fact that you don't draw down your pledge funds. If you don't hit your target, you don't draw down your pledge funds and you don't draw down your champion funds if you've not reached the appropriate amounts to hit that. But there's no penalty otherwise. You don't get to not keep your money that you have fundraised. Okay.
No.
I'd be interested to hear from anybody who's joining today, if there is interest on doing Big Give, if there's anything particular, is there anything that puts you off, or that what either is most inviting, or what is most off-putting?
I'd just like to say it's been very useful for me. This is the first time I did the Big Give for my charity, and we got over our match funding that we wanted. I didn't do the pledging because I was nervous about it, but I might consider it now. But I would recommend it to anyone to do. It's I thought it was fantastic. A lot of work, as you say, but it's worth it. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Sue. That's useful. Yeah, that's really useful feedback. And sorry, I just cheekily launched an end poll there because we really value your feedback on sessions like this. So if you have another spare minute to fill it in, we really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm grateful. So I'll wait another minute. So this is your last chance to ask a question while we're waiting.
Did anyone have any thoughts on that question from Tabitha actually about what is off-putting? I think maybe Jenny, Wendy, I don't know,
Sorry, I missed
you're
that.
clearly thinking of doing something.
I think it's the for me. I think as I've known a little bit for a while anyway, in advance, looked at this from different angles already for a few years, but it's the pressure, the pledging, which seems to me to be a complex thing to have to manage to set up in advance, and pressure and a big pressure. And then the pressure of the time on the thing, which I appreciate is part of the dynamic, right? It's part of a campaign dynamic to have a limited timetable for giving, but it's a big pressure, I think, for communications, for your social media to be all very well organized, for everything to be organized for that time period, and it's going to give yourself a big pressure to perform on that in that specific way and to line everyone up, which I appreciate is the efforts that have been made by some and successfully, clearly. So well done to them. But that's what worries me about it. There was a mention of doing it without pledging. Sue mentioned, and now I'm confused. There's a way to do it without pledging.
Actually, sorry, I didn't say I did the green campaign, which you have the option not to have any pledges.
It's one of the different things. Okay, yeah, not the same as the Christmas campaign. Yes, I'm aware the Big Give does several different models. It all gets a bit.
Yeah, and the small charity week the same. So maybe that becomes an alternative in the future as well when they support international development charities. Yeah.
Sorry, say that again, please, Lena.
Sorry, I was mentioning the small charity week that they're piloting this year. But yeah, as I said, it's not yet available for international development charities. But if it does in the future, if they make it open for those kind of organizations, and maybe that becomes an alternative because it also doesn't work with the pledge model. Yeah.
Would most of the pledges come from, as you say, obviously people you already know, but I haven't tried any corporate organizations because I don't know how to do that. I'm a very small charity. And I had presumed that I would need to get corporate organizations involved in order to do pledging. I don't know. So that's something I have no idea about.
I think some people have had they will go to larger individual supporters who give on an annual basis and just ask them if they would come in as a pledge. But on the corporate side, local businesses, anything sort of that has a connection to what you do or how you do it or where you work. I think just reaching out to often smaller businesses in the local area. And I think just that, because there's also that message that you can give around doubling the contribution. So anything the pledge gives is actually 4 times, you're quadrupling their contribution. Is that right? I think yes. So there's sort of a bit of an incentive there sometimes as well.
Thanks, that's great.
Okay, yeah, it'd probably be good to end the session as we're already overran. Yeah, sorry about that. I guess it was a lot of input for one session, but as you could tell, it's quite complex. So there's a lot to say, and I will share the slides afterwards, so you can go back as well and even watch the video that I have put in there, which will explain the concept again. I think it takes a moment to get your head around it. All right. Well, yeah, what's left to say, just a massive thank you to everyone who came, everyone who was involved and contributed. And yeah, particularly the speakers. Thanks very much. Yeah. Hope you have a good rest of your afternoon, everybody. All right.
Sounds good. You want to apply and good luck. And let me know if you're going to apply. That would be great.
Thank you. Well, okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.